Hey guys, it's Mr. Mini Painter and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how I painted Olwyn, the shieldmaiden of Rohan, one of the newest miniatures of the Middle-earth strategy battle game Rings by Games Workshop. And it's a beautiful model on foot and mounted, so I'm going to show you how I painted both of them. Now if you like this kind of content, please consider subscribing to the channel and I'll keep you posted on any new video that's coming out in the near future. So to start off with, I base coated my models in a light gray primer and give it a sandy bottom. It's always easier to do it up front than afterwards, because this way you get to prime it all in one color and paint it immediately. So I started with painting the face with Knight Questor Flesh. And at this moment I'm painting both models at the same time, so the foot model as well as the mounted one, because they consist of the exact same colors, so why not? Saves a lot of time. I'm going to show you the result of the mounted model about halfway this video, as we're going to continue painting the horse, but for now I'm focusing on the version on foot. So next color is Kislev Flesh, and I'm painting the highlighted areas, the raised areas, so the knuckles, the fingers, the nose, the cheekbones, the chin, the forehead, etc. And what I'm doing here is I'm kind of creating a hard line, the brightest color, and then watering down my paint and work towards the brightest area. So you kind of pull the paint towards the area that you want to be brightest. Next step is I'm mixing it with some palette witch flesh. So I'm making an extreme highlight here and focusing on smaller areas than I did before. So just the tip of the nose, the cheekbones, the eyebrows, the knuckles, just to make it a little bit sharper, so to say. Next I'm coloring in the eyes with Abaddon Black. I want to have some black trim around the eye. I kind of messed up here, so I cleaned it up later. Then with palette witch flesh and a fine tip, I'm painting in the eye, leaving some of the black surrounding the eye, so it really stands out from the rest of the face. Then again with some Abaddon Black, I'm painting in a pupil. This is an extreme precise process, and messing up is easy, but achieving that exact eye that you aim for is so rewarding. Figure out where she's looking at. Next I'm washing the face with some Reichland Flesh Shade. Try to avoid the eyes at this stage. Or do it before, as I should have done. Next step, Mechanicus Standard Grey for the hair. Just paint in all of the hair, including the ponytail on the back. There's a lot of loose hair here, some curls, but that really adds to the detail of this model. Once dried, I'm painting some highlights with Administratum Grey. And at this stage I'm focusing on the larger area of hair, so leave some of that darker gray shining through. You can hold your brush sideways if you want, if it makes it easier, or if you have a very steady hand, just do it like this. Next I'm picking out a smaller area and focusing on the very top of the hat with some gray sear as an extreme highlight. Just pick out some tiny hairs here, and maybe some at the bottom. Just figure out which hairs would reflect the most light. It's always like on top of a curve. Next I'm painting in the cloth with some Ushabti bone. With some paints it's necessary to go over it twice. It depends on your coverage, the thickness of your paint. And then with some Rhinox hide I'm painting in the pants. Or trousers. Depending on where you live, probably. Also the wrist pads, the arm protection, I'm painting with the same Rhinox hide. And a tiny piece on top of the chest. Then back to a shabti bone, I'm painting some tiny details on the wrist pads, the arm pads. I couldn't really figure out from the box art whether they should be golden or the same color as the cloth. So I chose the latter. Now you should have something like this. So with our base colors finished, we're going for some washes. First off, some Seraphim Sepia for the cloth area. Gives it a nice orangey brown look, which really works well with the other browns. Now let's finish this cloth, and to do so we're going back to a shabti bone, just to pick out those raised areas, large surfaces, and the edges. I'll leave some of that shade shining through. After which we're going to continue with Screaming Skull. It's a beautiful highlight that really works with the previous color. I'm picking out some of the wrist pads as well and the chest, just some highlights here and there. When painting a model, it's always important to figure out where your light source, your imaginary light source, is coming from and stick to that side to highlight. It makes for a more natural look. To highlight the pants, I'm adding Baneblade Brown to the Rhinox hide. I'm focusing on the top part of the leg. You can cover some large areas with this color, after which we're going to be highlighting that with some Baneblade Brown. With this, I'm trying to achieve some fine lines here and there to make it look like there are some creases in the cloth of the pants. Next step is adding some Scrag Brown to the Rhinox hide and painting the straps. The strap holding her cloak together, the belts. And then with some pure Scrag Brown, I'm adding some edge highlights. It's a tiny process. Easy to mess up, but you can always go back to the base colors. Next step is the cloak. Castellan green I used as a base color. You can use a large brush here since it's a big area. And we paint in the areas around the hair or any other parts that are touching the rest of your already painted model. Use a smaller brush, or at least a smaller tip. Then I'm highlighting it with some Deathwell Forest, and I'm adding some highlighted areas as well, so the larger parts of the cloak will also be painted with this same color. With the edges, I'm sticking to the edges, and here you can take some larger areas. As you can see, that would normally reflect the most light, and we're going to be highlighting this later on. This way you get a nice gradient in your colors. Then with some Ogrim Camo, I'm adding an extreme highlight, so focusing only on those very tiny edges to create some extra detail here and there. Now we're focusing on the boots and the protection there. With some Caliban green, I'm painting the leg protection she's wearing over her boots, because I want to have some different kinds of green on the boots and the armor there. It's a nice and bright green color. For the boot itself, I'm using Castellan green. I'm washing the leg armor with some Poxwalker, which is a shade, but you can use Biltang green as well if you want. The boots itself, I'm washing with some Nuln Oil. We're now going to paint some straps on the back of this plate with Rhinox hide. There's also some strap going over it on the top. Next we're going to be highlighting that with the same color we used before, which is Scrag Brown, and give it a nice tiny edge highlight. If you're able, the nicest way to do so is top and bottom, but it's a very, very small area to paint. When you're doubting your skills or you don't want to mess it up, just focus on the top, because that's the most visible part. I'm then using Deathworld Forest to add a highlight to the boots. And some Stormhost Silver to add a nice shiny edge to the plate metal, the armor plate, whatever it's called, on the front of her leg. I'm then adding some shine to this plate by mixing Ogreen Camo and Caliban Green to create a very subtle shine to it at the top of it. Then some Storm Vermin fur to the cloth under her arm protection. It's just a tiny part and also some straps going over it, which we're going to be painting next. And the straps, we're going to use the same recipe as before, by starting with Rhinox hide, nice and dark, and highlighting that with some Scrag Brown. Add some tiny lines. Then the shield is coming up. Cantor Blue as a base color. It's mainly the front, but there's some piece of the back showing as well. And remember to paint those tiny parts between the cracks on the side of the shield. Once dry, wash it with some Drakenhof Nightshade. The metal parts, which is the center and the sides, we're going to be painting with lead belcher. Next, we're going to be giving the metal parts on the shield a wash of Nuln Oil. We're then going to be highlighting the metal parts with Stormhost Silver, focusing just on the top edges. There's some cracks here and there, so give those cracks some extra sharpness by trying to paint a line above it. And then some shine on top here. And then with some Temple Guard blue, I'm going to do the same for the cracks in the blue wooden part. Then all that's left is the sword. We're starting with the scabbard with Corvus Black. I used Retributor armour for the gold parts of the sword. For the scabbard as well as the hilt of the sword. The tiny piece of sword that is showing, I painted with lead belcher. I then used some Reikland Flesh Shade to shade the golden areas, and a tiny bit of Nuln Oil on the sword. I'm then highlighting the golden parts with Canoptic Alloy. Just give it some shine on the top. Make it look more realistic. Some Nuln Oil on the sword. The blade part, that is. And then some shine on the back of the scabbard with some Mechanica Standard Grey. And give it a tiny highlight with some Dawnstone. And then all that's left is the base. And for that I'm using Garagak's Sewer to give it a just nice sandy look. And that's it for the model on foot, and we're focusing on the mounted model, which I painted with the exact same colors thus far, and of course now we're going to be focusing on the horse itself. A base color for the horse will be Rhinox Hide. I'm going to give it a dark base color and build up to some more red brown. And the first step towards this red is using Doomble Brown, which is already quite red, but we're going to take it one step further. What I'm doing here is leaving those recessed areas nice and dark, as if it were a shade. And this way you don't have to use shades by itself. Of course you can, and you can start with Doomble Brown and add some Agrex Earthshade, but I think this is more natural looking. Next step is Wordbearer's Red, which is one step further than we did before. And I'm kind of using smaller areas to paint so you get a nice transition from the browns to the more red colors, and focusing on the top areas. So the belly of the horse is staying a bit darker, and all the areas that were less visible, remain nice and dark. I'm now mixing some Jokero orange to the word bearer's red and try and paint in tiny hairs. Sort of tiny brush strokes, tiny lines, and it really adds to a kind of furry look. I'm doing this only on the very, very edges, the highest, most visible areas of the horse, as if it were a final highlight. Then with some dried bark I'm painting in all the hair, so the tail and the manes of the horse. As well as the saddle and all the straps. So the reins, the belt around the saddle and the bottom of the horse, those reins here, all the headgear. And then we're on to Karak stone to paint the lower parts of the legs. I wanted it to be just as a box art, so I'm painting the lower part of the legs with this color first, which is to about more or less the knees. Of course you can choose how far you want to take this. And to make it look more natural, just pull your brush in vertical lines so you get some lines that look like hair. I'm using the same color on the saddlebags as well. And I'm painting the hooves with Abaddon black. There are some horseshoes there on the bottom as well. We're gonna pick those out later. Then also some Karak stone on the nose of the horse. I thinned it down quite a bit so there is a nice blend from the brown to the brighter part. But you may have to go over it twice. Next up, some washes again. Agrax Earthshade on the tail and the manes of the horse. And some Seraphim Sepia to the lower legs, as well as the saddlebags. And don't forget the nose. Now to finish the saddlebags, I'm using some dried bark on the straps, the belts going around it. And some Baneblade brown to give it an edge highlight. I also used Baneblade brown on all the straps and reins that the horse has, except for the saddle. I'm also using Baneblade brown, but this time with a dry brush on the tail and the manes of the horse. Then with some XV88, I'm painting a edge highlight on the saddle. I wanted to have a bit of a different color, as it were more of a leathery look. And next I'm highlighting the lower legs with some Ushabti bone. At this point the shades have had some time to dry, You can focus doing this again. My movies overall is going a bit back and forth. At one point I would like to finish a part that I'm painting, so for example the legs, but there is some drying time and I always find it a waste to stop painting then, so I'm focusing on another area. I'm also doing the saddlebags with some Ushabti giving it some highlights. Then the horseshoes with Leadbelcher. They go all around the hooves, of course, and don't forget to paint the bottom. I'm also painting all the metal parts on the reins here. There's some rings and buckles. Next I'm painting in the teeth of the horse with palette witch flesh, which might seem a bit bright, but I'm going to darken it down by shading it later on. There is a tiny piece of tongue showing, which I painted with Galvorbag red. Now I'm painting in the eyes with palette witch flesh. And as I said, but did not film, I painted the inside of the mouth with Nuln Oil. Now once the eye is painted in, I'm painting in the right side of the eye with Abaddon Black. So creating a tinier ellipse all the way to the back. And once that is dry, I'm using Ianden Yellow to create some yellow edge to the eye. And that's it for Olwyn, the shieldmaiden of Rohan from the War of the Rohirrim movie. I really enjoyed painting her, and it was a lot of fun painting the horse with this unique red color. Now I hope this video was of any help to you guys, and if it was, please consider leaving a comment below. I'd love to hear from you and I'll respond to any of your remarks. And consider subscribing to the channel, as I'll be making a lot more videos. I also have a Patreon account which is really worth checking out, and your support really means a lot to me. For now, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in one of my next videos. Bye bye!